No, I was hoping they'd do it so I could get there.
Those were the longest 5-minute speeches I've ever heard in my life. See, when I planned this, I calculated 7 minutes each, 7 times 6, 42 minutes. They would have all been through by 2:35, say at the most, or 2:40 at the most. That was an hour ago. So we're going to have to dispense with you guys' inner discussion up here and open it up to the floor if we hear anything at all from people out there. Is that right? Is that okay? Because if you guys start discussing this among yourselves, having heard what we've just heard, we never would finish. So let's open it up from the floor. If anybody has any question or whatever, you just raise your hand and speak right up.
Louder.
He was that hard of hearing when I was talking about earlier.
I don't think it's working. Forgive my ignorance of how things are over where your work is going on, but will any of the changes in Russian things, government, affect your work, and if so, how?
Well, the answer to that is nobody has any idea whatsoever. They did pass a law, that was about 1.5 years ago, restricting what you can do in evangelism in Russia. And so as a result of the law, much of what we're doing right now is technically illegal. The law says that you cannot even invite someone into a Bible study or worship assembly. If they don't come on their own, you can't ask them to come, you see. You cannot say anything evangelistically to someone of a minor age without their parents' consent. If you're an unregistered church, you can't even legally meet for worship or Bible study. And you couldn't talk to anybody out on a sidewalk if you just happen to meet somebody or in a store or out somewhere in a public place. You couldn't say anything to them about Christ at all. So what we're doing in Russia and Ukraine and some places like that in the world is illegal. When Peter preached that sermon in Acts chapter 2, what he was doing was illegal. And that's how the apostles were called on the carpet by the Jewish authorities. The Sanhedrin had religious power. They were given that authority by their Roman overlords. They were in charge of religious affairs, and the Christians were operating illegally. And the point I'm making is we have a higher commander-in-chief, so we don't pay any attention to that. We just try not to get caught.
My question is also from Brother Gary. In the school, are you teaching with translators, or do they understand English for those who might be interested in coming over to help?
No, you'd need a translator. This young man, Alosha, is not perfect in English. His English is somewhat limited. In fact, my Russian was about on the same level with his English about 5 years ago when we started working together. And I had a fluent English translator that was working with me, but he was on leave of absence from his school work. They'd let him out to do field translation. They'd have to go check in every now and then. And when he was gone, Alosha was my translator. We'd go out on Bible studies together. And he couldn't say much in English, didn't understand much, but we would somehow conduct Bible studies, half in Russian, half in English. And after one of them was over, he said, you know, when you talk about the Bible, I understand almost everything you say, but when you talk about just everyday life, I don't understand anything at all. But he's come a long way since then, and he would do the translation.
This for Bob Stapleton. Bob, will you explain what's available in Tanzania for future missionaries, for evangelizing and facilities and schools and things like that, and helping the poor?
The work at Chamala Mission is rather large. Presently in Tanzania, which is about the size of the state of Texas and New Mexico, There's about 3 areas wherein we are working as far as the Lord's Church. In the Dar es Salaam area, which is out on the coastline, up in the Moshi Arusha area, which is up in the northern section of Tanzania, and then in the Chimala area, which is over to the southwestern part of the country. This is where we're located at. We have an approximate, I suppose, 400-acre mission. On that mission, we have right now a 100-bed hospital that has been there since it was begun by Brother Conley back in the early 60s. We also are in the process right now of starting and building a school system that is going to be able to allow us to teach Bible to the students starting from the primary, which is like the first grade, all the way up through into the end of the secondary or the high school grades. This is going to allow us to be able to bring in a better qualified student into our preacher's training school that we started back in 1987. On the mission itself, we have about 9 houses that are fairly up to date as far as the capability of housing American personnel. We have vehicles that are available. We actually have, and for those of you who have been to Tanzania, if you'll get our latest video that'll come out pretty soon that'll talk about that, we actually were able to sit on December the 25th and see ESPN live. We now have satellite television, which is just completely turning things upside down as far as the country, but the country of Tanzania is improving drastically. Things are changing so much, and there's so many opportunities now, but our problem is, as has been already stressed in our area, as other areas, we are needing missionaries very desperately because there is so much to be done in that area. Once we get up to the secondary level of our school system, we'll be able to continue teaching the Bible program. We're teaching Bible in every class every day. This is perfectly legal. Now, they do give us a syllabus that we have to teach by, and we teach that syllabus, and we say, this is what the government says we have to teach, and then at the end we say, and this is what the Bible says. We say, this is what the syllabus says you have to know when you take the test. This is what God says you have to know when you take the final test at the end. And that is really getting the point across, and we're having excellent success. As a matter of fact, with our intake coming into the Standard 1 or first grade classes for this coming year, we had over 120 children show up to test to come into the school. We only wanted to have 70, and we ended up with 90, which meant we still end up having to turn away 30 children, and things are really going great in that area. So there's so many opportunities. I would have to take a lot more time than this to explain everything.
This is for Jody. Up in Montana, I'm sure you're in a rural area. We traveled through 3 cities just to get here from Irving today. I was wondering, we take for granted the lectureship, the gospel meetings surrounding congregations have. How big is your congregation, and what's the availability for the surrounding areas that haven't had the gospel to come to your congregation, and do you get a lot of visitors from the surrounding areas?
There were 7 members meeting in Ronan when I got there at the end of 95. Is that better? There we go. There were 7 members meeting in Ronan when I got there at the end of 95, and we have an average of about 33 or 34 now. As for the area, there are 2 congregations in a town that is about 12 miles north of us. One would be, I think, considered a non-institutional congregation. The other is off on the deep end. And, well, they're on the south end of Flathead Lake. So we draw people from several miles around, and we put a bulletin out that we send to those communities. We're going to try to expand into some radio commercials and things like this. Other than that, the nearest congregations where we have any real support from the brethren are 60 miles to the north in Kalispell, and likewise 60 miles to the south in Missoula. And so we have some support from those brethren in regard to some moral support and some visitation. And the church in Missoula has financially supported the work there for a number of years. But principally it has come from my supporting congregation here in Fort Worth, the Highland congregation, their support for me and a great deal of assistance in a renovation program we have in place at this present time. One last thing about the state, there is a state lectureship. I'm going to attend it if Lord willing in March. Just to tell you where that's going, their keynote speaker is Lynn Anderson.
I have a question, pardon my voice with a cold. for the 3 men who work stateside. Texas, Oklahoma have an abundance of churches with multiple staff members. What would you say to elders who are paying multiple staff to work with members of the church in Texas and Oklahoma, where the church is strong, when they could actually pay that staff member and send him somewhere in the States to work with churches that are struggling? In other words, Brother Cotham said we have the money, and we do. Tremendous wealth in the church in the United States. How would you feel about large staffs breaking up, and instead of focusing and concentrating on the South, let's pay these people and send them north?
You're asking me to get in trouble with my eldership here? I've talked to the elders at Highland about that a time or two, something similar to that. One thing I would encourage is we have brethren that are young, my age, plenty capable of securing work wherever they want to go. Perhaps a congregation and eldership could consider encouraging young couples to go and help a missionary in a mission field, to get a job in that local area and become part of that community and plant their family in that area and become active in the community, and the congregation support them equal to what they have left behind, in addition to what they can earn on their own if they come to an area like where I am, where jobs do not pay as much as they do like here in the Metroplex. So that would be a suggestion I would make in that regard, and I would welcome any of the others to add to that.
Would you let a foreign worker help answer that? Maybe we could do like Moses did. You know, he put his staff out over the Red Sea. We could just send our staff over the sea, you know, and off to some foreign country. Do you realize in the 14 countries that make up the Middle East, we don't have one American missionary or worker, except possibly in Israel. The 14 Arab countries, not one. Doesn't that tell us something?
In my area of work, I am the Hispanic preacher for Hillcrest Church of Christ. We're staffed with 2 gospel preachers, myself and Bobby Bates, that take care of the work there in Stephenville. So how that would apply to me in particular, I don't know.
I don't want to get rid of him.
But I do appreciate my eldership as well, because they're very interested in the mission work as well, sending me off to, or allowing me, not sending me off, that wouldn't sound good, does it? But allowing me to work, to do mission work as well in Honduras and Mexico as well. And they're also aware of the necessity in Texas as well, allowing me to help out different congregations, and one in particular in Odessa, and another one in Grand Prairie. So I have a real good eldership, and they're very knowledgeable in the scriptures, and know the importance of a bilingual individual that send me to different areas, but they still keep me in Stephenville to help Bobby out.
I feel that congregations that are established even in what we call weak places or mission fields should be taught to try to establish congregations in their area. If we read the New Testament, the church of Thessalonica sounded out the word. And then Philippi, Paul said, you sent once and again to my necessities. Sometimes you helped when other congregations didn't. I feel like we need to try to get the American churches, and even in mission fields, off of the dole system and let them do some things themselves and to be mission-minded. And the same thing would be true in foreign countries as well. We're not primarily just going to take care of them and on. Teach them to give and to be mission-minded and evangelistic in their work. And they don't have to wait 10 or 15 years to begin doing it either.
Yeah, I was a missionary over in Holland for a number of years. And one of the most successful works we had over there was where they had 4 families working in one city. Well, you had multiple staff, I guess you might say, but it was all of these guys worked together, and it was very profitable for spreading the gospel to work over there. It's really according to the size of the congregation. We have some congregations that are rather large, and they have various men who are working in various capacities to help the congregation to fulfill its obligation. But what needs to be done is there needs to be more teaching on evangelism. It really starts with the preacher, and I think the preacher is the key, is that he needs to be convinced that he needs to preach on it. He needs to preach on it and preach on it and preach on it. But then also he needs to set the example of what a personal evangelism is all about. And then there's, of course, the training of the people in evangelism. The people need to be trained. They need to be given a method, a simple method of reaching out to others. And they need to be encouraged. And if you had, like in one place where I worked, I was the personal work director. And so we had a number of people who were involved in evangelism. And it was my obligation to train them, encourage them, and help them in every way that I possibly could. So there's pros and cons, either way. I think, like in our situation with Caesar and mine, our eldership is very evangelistic. We're supporting a number of guys here going through the preacher training school. They send me on campaigns for Christ in India and various places. They also send Caesar, and so there's a lot of emphasis on evangelism in our local situation and for foreign mission work as well.
Okay, this is for Bobby Bates. I was wondering, I've heard you talk before about getting indoors. It seems like there's so many doors closed today. Where do you find the prospects? How can you get indoors today?
That's it seems like it's more difficult now to find prospects, than it used to be. But there are lots of, I could give you a whole list of how to find prospects. Where do I have that? Anyhow, I've got a whole list of various places where you can find prospects. But the best place to find prospects is through the members. There's no way that I can go out and set up studies with everybody. But the members know people. There is an area of fellowship that people have that I don't have. You have, for example, coworkers. These are some contacts here with your coworkers, the people who your children associate with, like the Little League or various things that they're involved in, and you can develop relationships with those people. The new converts, and I think this is one of the best ways of finding prospects is through the new converts. And so there are lots of avenues of finding prospects. We just need to get out and find them.
Brother Jack Dyer is one of my mentors that encouraged me to preach. And I'll tell you right now that there are dozens of people that have obeyed the gospel from his shoeing their horses and preaching to that captive audience while they're holding that horse on a lead. Prospects can be found and made anywhere. Lady working on my teeth at the dentist office is now coming to church in Ronan. She's now bringing the accountant of that dentist office and the secretary and another friend. We got visitors bringing visitors to Ronan simply because I took the time while my mouth was dead to tell her, we'd like for you to come visit church someday. It don't matter how ridiculous or silly it seems, take every opportunity to say, I'm serving Christ. I'd like you to get to hear the gospel. That's how prospects are made, in my humble opinion.
One more thing that I would like to add to that question that was asked to Bobby is the gospel preacher or the pulpit preacher should get involved in the community as well. Visiting the hospitals is a good way of making contacts. Being there when a newborn baby is born in the family is an excellent place to be. As well with the local jails and prisons. And I'm presently the chaplain for the Erath County Sheriff's Department. That gives me a lot of contacts. I've been the chaplain for them for I would say a year and a half, going on 2 years, I believe. And we baptized one person because of myself being out in the community, talking to people, counseling individuals. So getting involved with the community is a good place to start as well.
Let me add something to that, too. I said something earlier about in foreign evangelism, don't try to convert people by mail, but I want to make sure that what I meant was understood. We use a correspondence course, which I also mentioned earlier, and it has converted a lot of people, but the sale, if you want to call it that, was done personally. And I think that if I were back in full-time local work here in this country, I would take a renewed look at the effectiveness of correspondence courses. They won't work unless you push them. They won't work unless you advertise them. We continually advertise our correspondence course out of Poltava, Ukraine, and that newspaper goes all over that country, and we've converted people as far away as about a 12-hour car ride. And I think that's one thing we must not overlook. It's not real popular to do cold turkey door knocking anymore, and the Jehovah's Witnesses, I guess, have kind of soured residents on opening the door to that sort of thing, but still, I don't know that that's a reason to quit doing that. And we were doing that in Las Vegas, Nevada, where I once preached. And that might seem a strange place to do cold turkey door knocking. My wife, Sonny, was out and making her round down this block. We had a bunch of our members out doing this, and she came up to this yard where there was a chain link fence and a real mean looking dog inside that fence. They had the fence around the front yard. And she thought, well, I'll just pass this one by. And then as she almost got past the property, she said, no, I'm supposed to knock on every door, and I'm going to go back and knock on this one. And so they had one of these great big old gates that you had to push sideways with a big old wheel, and it rolled right over her foot as she was trying to get in. So limping up to the front door, and with the old dog looking hungry, standing nearby with his mouth open, she rang that doorbell, and guess what? Ended up converting those people. And I think a lot of times we just don't get much done because we just don't have enough gumption to get out and do anything and everything that we possibly can.
I'd like to add something else. Brother Dave mentioned in the hour before lunch, the poor have the gospel preached unto them, and there's respect for the poor. In the Philippines, I worked with the preacher. He advertised what he called medical mission, went to a very poor section of Greater Manila, and with the use of 2-3 nurses and a doctor or two, it was free examination and free medicine that had been bought and provided for the people. And while they were in line with the number, he went around and asked them if they'd be interested in taking a free Bible correspondence course. And of course I bought Bibles, as I always do in all the places like that. If you don't have a Bible, we'll give you a Bible. But of course it's stamped on that it's from the Church of Christ. And that contact was made, and he said, this is done with an effort to try to establish a congregation in this area. We'll follow up on those who take the Bible correspondence courses and who show an interest, maybe teach them and baptize them, and then help them to assemble as a place in the congregation. Now that's one example. Another example I give, when I was going to Taiwan after the earthquake, I said to Joe Ruiz, well, I want to buy a lot of Bibles. And as soon as I got over there, we went and bought Bibles. That would be okay. And then we went to the hospital in the area where so many of the earthquake victims were still being treated. Children with limbs amputated, and gave them a Bible, the stamp of the Church of Christ on it, and the address, things like that. Some of them wanted me to sign the Bibles, which I was glad to do. But there are some contacts that have been made, which we hope will be favorable for the Lord's church in the future. And so we can't overlook helping the poor and the needy, the hospitals, and in various ways like that.
I think in basic conclusion of all of that, it's seen in the principle of simply launching out, going outside of these doors and looking for opportunities. We're not doing that. There's already so many illustrations of that. We talk about medical evangelism. Of course, if you're aware of Chamala Mission Hospital, that's why we're there. I keep telling people say, what are you doing there? Well, we're opening doors. And it's kind of like what someone has said, they don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And there are certain ways that we can show the people that we care about them, and this will open the door for us to talk to them about the Lord. And we're seeing that in Jamala. We have 3 full-time chaplains, for example, working in the hospital. I have picture after picture after picture of these guys sitting on a cement with their Bibles open, studying with someone. It's different there than here, of course, but the bottom line is still the same. You have to get out where the lost people are if you're going to find the lost sheep.
Yeah, let me just a few more comments along that line. I found whenever I move into a new place, I always ask the secretary to make me up a list of people who are married to non-Christians, where one's a Christian, the other's not, and then also ask for a list of delinquent Christians. And so I began following up on those. This one place where I worked just recently, we had it seemed like it was 30 some odd baptisms the first year I was there. And it was mostly the mates of Christians. Also, whenever you're following up on the delinquent Christians, you find that they generally they have children there who have not yet obeyed the gospel, and there's some other good opportunities. Engaged couples they're good prospects, especially whenever they're planning to get married. You can say, "Can I sit down and study with you, help you to prepare your life to make your marriage a better?" Newlyweds, people who've just gotten married, the parents of newborns, especially when it's the first child. And there's a deacon there now where I just moved from, who when I went to visit with him, they had the first child, and I began to talk to him. Have you ever thought what you're going to do with this baby now that God has given you this child? And he said, "I've been thinking about it all day." And before then, I've been by their house, no telling how many times. They were never interested, but he was interested. Taught him the gospel, baptized him into Christ, and he's, like I said, he's a deacon in the church now. Friends of new converts, also, these are some very good prospects.
This question is for Brother Trevino. Is it your opinion that the increasing Hispanic population in our general vicinity would be attracted to learning English as a second language, and could that be a good entree into that group?
When I first arrived there in Stephenville, I started to appeal in that way. Did not have a lot of response towards that in Stephenville. And there in Stephenville, we did not have a lot of response, but sometimes I believe that a lot in the Brotherhood think that's a gimmick, so it's not widely used here because of that thing. They think it's a gimmick, but I believe any way of reaching a lost soul, and if it's teaching them English and them realizing their condition of the soul, it can be done in a way where it's not a gimmick. But with me, it wasn't successful where I'm at in Stephenville. I haven't heard of anywhere else where it's been used in Texas where it has been successful.
Add something to that?
I might add one.
You may be heading the same direction, Gary, because this is something you did, I think. Real quick, why couldn't we have eldership that would hire a Spanish teacher to come teach some brethren Spanish and appeal to those people in their own language? We do it when we go to foreign countries. Why not do it here? That's a good question I'd like to ask.
Using foreign language instruction to teach Bible does produce results. Sometimes not all that we would like for it to do, but we had a brother over in St. Petersburg, Russia, who was advertising learn English. He just put an ad in the paper, American teacher, and you can learn English and so forth. He got a lot of calls. As soon as they would call up or come, he would say, "Now I want you to know I'm here to teach Bible. That's my purpose of being in this country. But at the same time, I'll help you learn some English. I'm going to teach you the Bible in English. And if you want to study on that basis, then fine. But I want you to understand it right off the bat." And he got a lot of people that took him up on it, and many people were converted as a result. I don't know why that couldn't work.
Some of the gospel preachers that I've talked to, one in Cleveland, as a matter of fact, used that. And he told me of a situation that happened with them. A group of people got together. They were going to teach the Hispanic population how to read English. Well, they called immigration, And when they all got there, the majority of them had to be shipped back to Mexico. When this gets out into the community and they hear of somebody's cousin being shipped to Mexico, or my niece got shipped to Mexico for this, there's a lot of people that will hesitate to do things like this. And that's just one instance in Cleveland that I'm familiar with, that because I didn't understand why it wasn't working. And like I said, a lot of people are saying, well, it's just a gimmick and this and that. That's why they're not doing it. But maybe it's more than that. Maybe history itself has scarred them.
I understand also that some are teaching English in China, and in a private way, kind of slipping to them a Bible to study. And if they want to ask some questions, kind of answer them. And that's one way to get in. Gary also mentioned about things being illegal in certain parts of the former Soviet Union, but I was in Latvia, Riga, last November, '98, and that's free. I went to high schools, universities, and talked to them and distributed Bibles and took names of Bible correspondence course and had thousands of tracts printed in the Russian language to be distributed. So you can't say that all of the former Soviet Union has strict restrictions. It kind of depends on where you are, I think. Gary, will you agree with that statement?
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes, even though they have a law against it, you can still get away with it. We have the chief of religious affairs in Poltava, Ukraine, where we do a major part of our work, knows that we're in there. He knows we're coming in, not on a religious visa. He refuses to grant one. He's very against Christianity, and so we have to get in some other way. And he knows we're in there, he knows we're doing religious work, but he just hasn't caught us yet. And if he did catch us, I guess we'd be deported, probably never get back into the country again. But so far, 5 years have gone by, and he still hasn't caught us yet. Max, I know you're anxious to get up here. Okay.
One more question.
Yeah, and then, okay.
Who wants to ask that question?
I've got it, I guess.
There it is, right
Yes,
there.
sir. I've been preaching in Wyoming only for 7 months now, and I'm blessed with a great support. And none of my supporters have said, given me a time limit, 2 years, 5 years, you've got to grow so much numerically, whatever. But I am concerned about that, obviously. And I'm concerned about maybe their patience in, of course, a time of evaluation will come. And I don't want to leave the brethren there, abandon them in time just because there's only a few. I wonder if you'd address maybe, I know we don't like to use the word success, having success in the mission area, but along those lines, as far as when is it too long or time to go or whatever, like something like that.
Who wants to answer that?
I like the word success. I think anytime you win a soul to Christ, you've had success. And I'll say this much. I don't feel that I have been truly and genuinely effective in my work in Ronan until this last year. It took that much time for me to rebuild the reputation of a struggling church in that community and to establish myself in that community. And so in my experience, as limited as it is, I would encourage elderships and congregations that are behind men that want to go to a foreign place or to a domestic work to support them well and to support them with encouragement and to encourage them to be steadfast and not give up when times get hard and to stay there long enough to be effective. And I don't know if that directly answers your question, PJ, or not, but that's how it's been effective in our case.
Maxie, 5 of us up here are really sorry that Brother Perry Cotham took up all of our time. Taking 12 minutes to deliver his earlier speech, after our fine examples even. But on the other hand, it's a great compliment to his ability that such an old man, 88 years, could deliver a 30-minute sermon in only 12 minutes. I wanted to say just one final thing. Somebody's got to get the last word, I guess, and that is just something in general. Do you remember what happened to Paul when he went into Ephesus in the book of Acts? And started preaching the gospel, and the whole town turned out and had a huge riot. Brethren were afraid that Paul's life would be lost. And it was about the worst situation that any of us could possibly imagine us facing on some mission field or in some place even here in our own country. And yet from that place in Ephesus, Paul wrote 1 Corinthians, and in chapter 16, verse 9, he said, "A great and effectual door has been opened unto me, and there are many adversaries."
He was in jail at Rome, and he wrote the Philippian letter, and he said, "The saints in Caesar's household greet you." And so there have been converts made in the palace ground. Gary needs to read, "All liars shall have their part in the lake of fire and brimstone."
No, I timed it. I timed it. It was 12 minutes.
For inviting us to have this part this afternoon. All of us, I think, Maxie and the elders, a great word of thanks.
Thank you so much, Perry. I hate to bring this to conclusion, but it's 7 after 4, and it was planned to 4 o'clock. But we appreciate you fellows being here, and I think you've all contributed very significantly so, and we're grateful for that. We do want to remind you that the singing will be at 6:30 tonight. Brother Foy Forehand is here, one of the great song leaders in the church, equally great gospel preacher. So we're glad to have him with us, and he'll be leading us, I trust, in some good old-fashioned gospel singing. So be back at 6:30. Then we've got a real great treat in store. At 7 o'clock, Brother Bert Jones will be speaking on Lift Up Your Eyes to See the Need. Is Bert with us in here today? Well, I know he's present. Yeah, he's here, but I don't see him in the auditorium right now. Then at 8 o'clock, Brother Frank Chesser will be preaching on implementing the Great Commission. We do a lot of talking about it. These gentlemen are implementing it, and all of us need to be implementing it. Is Frank Chesser in here? Well, okay, they're probably studying their lessons for tonight. I don't. But we're glad for your presence. I'm going to ask Brother James Cudd, if he would, to come to the microphone from Sentinel, Oklahoma, and lead us in a closing prayer. But these guys are really wonderful men, and they